Hey everybody, welcome to Reanimated. This is episode 139. My name's Stuart. Joining me is the inescapable H.A. Conrad. Hello.
Hello. Don't
What's
even try
happening?
to escape.
No, you're like the shambling hordes, except nicer. How's it going? We're gonna do a podcast. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Have you gotten your coffee on?
I have.
Okay. Shot of Jameson lined up on the side there.
Nope. Late night, trekking out to see an 8th grade musical. It was awesome.
Oh, what was the production?
Into the Woods, which I have to say is a pretty, it's a tough one for 8th grade boys to
Wait, is that the Bill Bryson book?
No, Into the Woods. It's the one where there's 4 different fairy tales.
Nah, I don't know that one.
It's a little dark, but they kind of cleaned it up for an 8th grade production because there's some pretty adult themes in it. And so I think they call it was the musical score is actually Into the Woods Junior. But what it doesn't really take into account are, the 8th grade boys who are having some trouble with some cracking voices. And 2 of them were singing one of the songs called Agony, and I felt like they were in agony, and I felt like we were in agony. Yes.
So you're psychically very well prepared to talk about
I am
zombies today.
But I guess what I was trying to say is that there wasn't enough coffee in the world to give me some recovery from said musical. But the kids were great. The production was fantastic. So cannot complain. But and there was especially, the baker's wife, who I may be related to, may or may not be, was awesome, as was the cow. So it was good.
Nice.
I never want to be a teenager again. I can tell you that much.
I'm pretty sure that's a commonly held belief. But however, we've got a few things in the hopper for news. The first and foremost is the most disturbing thing, and perhaps the death knell of the genre we love so much. We've spent a lot of time talking about how the genre hasn't jumped the shark. It's still got a lot of, no big deal that zombie is used in every news headline for everything, about this to politics to sports to insurance fraud. But now Disney.
Well, that was why I was bringing up the musical, because I thought that was a nice segue into this news piece. Because another thing that I don't think teenage should be doing, Disney is doing basically a High School Musical with zombies. That's what they're doing. There's song, there's dance, there's zombies.
It's when those pesky kids from Zombie Town come to, I forget even the synopsis. It was just,
it's pretty rough.
Hard to, at least it's not a TV show. It's just a movie. It'll happen and then it'll go away.
I hope so. But yeah, that was what had me thinking. So yeah, we got that going on. I agree with you, but I'm kind of hoping this is just a blip. There's been a lot of bad zombie things. I'm just a little shocked that Disney hasn't gotten in on the game earlier. But
Well, I think we needed to the sliding scale of like scariness of the the genre to go from Walking Dead to iZombie, etc. At this point, they're ubiquitous as they are fluffy and cuddly, or at least they can be on that end of the scale. In other Walking Dead news, in other zombie/Walking Dead news, there's a few other things that are exciting, way more exciting than a Disney movie about zombies. Fear the Walking Dead, well, I shouldn't say way more exciting, given HA's skeptical approach to Fear the Walking Dead. However, that TV show is coming out June 4th. Season 3 is going to start. There's a fair amount of behind the scenes and teaser trailers out there. But they're a little spoilery to me, like the way that the last season left off. Really have kind of no idea what's happening. And then I watched this one behind the scenes video this morning that gave away a little more plot than I was, or at least setting than I was kind of ready for. Have you been seeing any of it?
What, the new? No, I've been avoiding it as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, so that show's opening up again on June 4th. In cast news, rather, Cliff Curtis of what's his character's name?
Troy? No. I don't
Troy.
remember.
Cliff Curtis's character, whose name we should know but no longer
The
do.
dad. The dad.
Yeah, Chris's dad.
Cliff? No, no,
Cliff.
no.
Yeah,
That's his actual
he's
name.
also known as Cliff. Either way, he has
Travis. Travis. Hey,
Travis.
I was
Yes,
close. Troy, Travis.
that was
Come
very
on.
close. He has recently
So
signed up to do
close.
the next four Avatar movies.
Which
Which
makes me think he's going to get killed off. What about you?
why are there? Well, they also go to they make a point of saying, "Oh no, shooting's going to fit in around the season," which sure maybe. Four. There's four Avatar movies coming out.
Yeah, because the first one. Okay, look, I know with the. Did you see it?
Hmm.
What did
I
you
saw it in
think?
3D. It was awesome. I really
I
liked it.
mean, visually, I liked it. I just thought the storyline was completely weak and horrible, and quite honestly, like the whole white man's burden theme of the entire movie, I felt was very tone deaf. So I am honestly surprised that they have the buy-in for like already this many sequels. I really think in terms of James Cameron's work, this is on the lower end of things. The only thing that made that movie was the visuals, and I just really am disappointed that they're doing this. But it doesn't surprise me that they then enlist a Fear the Walking Dead cast character as a mainstay. These things have a lot in common, in my opinion. Anyway, I don't feel strongly about it or anything.
No, clearly. Well, we have four more Avatar movies to look forward to, and Cliff Curtis is in every single one of them. He's going to be playing some like reef tribe chieftain and doing a lot of underwater scenes. Although I'm sure it's just all green screen, so he doesn't have to worry. Also in the news, this is near and dear to my heart, and not it has like a tangential zombie connection. Judge Dredd is coming back to the screens as a television series by Rebellion Entertainment, a video game producer who is branching into TV. Episodes probably are not expected until 2019 at the earliest, but
Nice.
fans of the of Judge Dredd and of 2000 AD, the comic that he appeared in, I don't know if it was first, but that was his home for the most time. Will remember there are characters who represent like the underworld, at the very least, like an alternate dimension of death in the form of Judge Death. And I think there's four other death and disease and famine related judges who also come up and are good antagonists for Judge Dredd. Yeah, so I'm super psyched for that. I think they're going to wrap in some other cool IP from that universe into this TV show. It has a lot of potential.
I mean, I like Judge Dredd. I don't feel like anything they've tried to do to make it come to life on the big screen or any sort of live action rendition has been worth what it has been lived up to the comic storyline. So this could be interesting, and hopefully they're taking some care with it so that what happened with other things, other interpretations won't happen with this. But yeah, I'm excited to see it.
I would argue that the 2012 movie Dread was absolutely in line with comics and the look and feel of reading those.
It was better. I just felt like it was still a little choppy.
I really enjoyed it. I saw that in 3D also, and that also lent itself very nicely to 3D.
I don't know. Your track record here, Avatar and Judge Dredd, I don't know about this.
It's you know what? It's easier. It's easier to criticize and shit on things than it is to like them, and
No,
'cause you have to
I
work
did.
harder to
Look,
like things.
I did like the visuals in the 2012 rendition. I did. I just thought that there were some problems with the script that were easily remedied. And I think that some of the issues and maybe some of the decisions that they made with that script could be remedied by a longer series like this, because there is a lot to fit into that storyline and there's a lot of complexities. So I get it, but this is, and maybe it's that this story in particular lends itself more to a a series as opposed to a film, and a lot of the times that's the case. And you see that with Watchmen, as you know, they did some visually, there were some really amazing things they did with that film, and I know it got a lot of critical. A lot of the fans are very upset with how they did it, but I was actually impressed by some of the things that they were able to do with it, considering how complex that storyline was. And again, I think that's something that probably lends itself more to a miniseries, similar to American Gods. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that maybe is going to be and Handmaid's Tale. That's going to be a great example, I think,
right. So
for complicated stories like the ones
right,
you're describing.
and I do think that you know with what we are seeing now, with just so many of these. So many of these series being picked up or produced or specifically created for certain online vehicle like content providers. I think you're going to see more of that, and I think that that's better overall in keeping stories intact in particular. So yeah. I wasn't shitting not to shit on it. Just saying.
I'm just giving you a hard time. I also really enjoyed The Watchmen.
Watchmen. Just Watchmen.
Yeah, whatever. I loved it. Doesn't matter if there's an article or not.
It does. It's an important article.
So Judge Dredd in 2019. I, for one, am excited. For the same reason I'm excited about Fear the Walking Dead Season 3, which is sheer potential. Sheer unfiltered
I don't think you're really
potential.
Excited about it. But
I am.
Okay.
Even with what I've seen of the setting, which I guess I didn't really want to know. But now I kind of do. There's still a chance to turn this whole thing around. So, and in the case of Judge Dredd, I guess that's also true for Judge Dredd, because there have been less than stellar attempts to adapt that material. Thanks Sylvester Stallone and Rob Schneider. But thank goodness for Carl Urban and his willingness to not take off a face covering helmet for an entire film. It's a sticking point for fans of Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Dude, there are like panels in that comic book of him in the bathtub with his helmet on. So, which obviously is a little bit of a joke, but still, that's the thing. I feel like there's a lot of potential for Fear the Walking Dead. It can happen. It'll just be a matter of whether or not they can pull it off.
I guess I know we're going to be reviewing it, so I guess I can put my judginess aside for the moment until we see what they actually do.
Let's give them a fair shake. However, episode 9 of season 6, Fear the Walking of Walking Dead, No Way Out, directed by Greg Nicotero, written by Seth Hoffman. Mm-hmm. It's the mid-season premiere for season 6, so people had to wait 3 months to see what was going to happen to these people left in Alexandria with the zombies everywhere and the guts.
Right. So and it starts out with a bang.
Yeah, it does. It does start out with a bang. Let's kick it off.
When we last saw Daryl and Sasha and Abraham, they had been waylaid by this group of intimidating bikers who were demanding that they take all their stuff. And they're outnumbered, and the main person who is like shouting orders at them has basically told them that all their stuff is Negan's, and he's being very showboaty about it. He's monologuing a lot, threatening to kill or not kill and that kind of thing. They sort of seem to give up pretty quickly because they are outnumbered, and the other group has a lot of weapons, and Daryl's taken to the back alone, which was a mistake on their part. They totally underestimated him. I mean, his little angel wing vest should have told them that he was somebody to be contended with. So in the course of the very long monologue where Abraham is threatened and not threatened,
and then threatened again.
Daryl has managed to silently strangle the gent that is with him and blows everybody up with the with the grenade launcher or whatever he's got going on.
Yeah, the RPG.
RPG, sorry. It's done. So that's pretty good, and they just kind of continue on their way. It's really a very flashy beginning to the season, and so we got that going on.
It's flashy. It's like a cheer for the for our group moment, and it's also the beginning of this slew of murders that
Right.
happen to the saviors.
Right. And as you had noted in the last episode, we should start taking a body count of the saviors because it does seem to be an inordinately high number, the kill count. So
Yeah. So wait, can we just do that real quick?
oh,
How
you
many?
do-
How
you
many?
want to do it? I know you want to do it. You know what? I guarantee you that somebody has probably done this.
I'm sure they have, but I want to do it for our
You
record.
want to do it for our own records. Okay.
It's a lot. And they're all on motorcycles too.
Is it like 10?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's only 8 of them.
There's 8, including the guy that takes Daryl to the back.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So starting out, 8 and one
8
hand.
guys,
In
all
one
with
hand.
assault rifles in one hand.
Well, one hand got chopped off. Remember?
Oh yeah. So far, they've killed 8 guys in one hand.
So 8 and a quarter. Maybe.
8 and a tenth. But yeah, it's a good opening for a mid-season premiere. I'll give it that. That's probably the highlight of the whole episode. However, which like this is a perfect use for a weapon like the RPG. It's not actually. If these guys were in an armored car or something that you had to penetrate, it would be the perfect use for it. But it's a great use for a television version of an RPG where it's 2 of our characters are about to be killed, and you got to pull out the big guns, literally. So they do that, and we're off to the races.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. There's that. I do like the nonchalant way in which Abraham just accepts that this has happened. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then Daryl's just like having none of it. Like, all right, let's get on our way. This again, it started out the episode in a very, it was a strong fashion, but I feel like a lot of the rest of the episode was not quite as strong. We've got a couple of things going on. One of them is the ongoing saga of the wolf.
Oh yeah, the wolf and Denise.
Which is just like similar to Glenn and Enid. There's a lot of the wolf and Denise running around, and Denise trying to convince the wolf that he's not bad, and the wolf trying to convince Denise that she is and that she should live like the wolf. And it similar fashion, it is equally annoying, and I just wish it would stop.
Yeah.
I don't know how you felt about it.
We already knew kind of that the wolf was a verbose fellow from when he sat down with Morgan at the breakfast fire. But that served a purpose, which was to bring down Morgan's guard so that the other guy could kill him.
Right.
In this case, it seems more like he's really trying to talk her into being braver than she is. Like it seems like a weird shift. Obviously, this whole episode is about trying to persuade us that Morgan has
been right.
Has succeeded. Yeah, which seems very unlikely with someone like this guy.
Right.
But hey, if that's really what we can take away from it, great. Right. But it does drag on. But this whole episode, I dislike this episode mostly because of the Guts conga line, which takes up a lot of the episode. And in fact, it's one of these crazy things that starts during the day and ends at night. Mm-hmm. Even though Alexandria is not this big.
No.
It also starts this big problem for me with this episode, where there are things happening on screen, but there's no sound except they're playing like Atmo music.
Yeah.
So it removes you. That's one like major layer of what's it called? Investment or saturation. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a major layer that's missing from my ability to soak up the show. Yeah. Because you take out sound and you're like, well, now what's happening? Is this a dream sequence? And that's a question I had to definitely the first time I watched this episode, I was convinced that elements of it were a dream.
Well, the way it plays out, I also had a similar feeling. I was like, is this real or not? And I had a few of those feelings in the last episode when you see, especially as it relates to Sam. and his family, because their reactions just seem so bizarre to me and not in line with what we've been seeing with other people and not in line with the situation at all. And maybe that's a little bit of what they're trying to show, is that that specific family just doesn't have the resilience to survive. But it's a bit surreal how they present it in this particular episode. And just we'll talk about it, I'm sure, a little bit more detail. But I'd also like to talk about the whole Father Gabriel piece in this particular episode, because as they are, remember, they're all camouflaged with the guts, as we saw in like what they did in the house. And they're kind of making their way through the zombie hordes with the guts on them. And Father Gabriel keeps saying weird stuff to Rick, like, I'll take care of the baby. And I just don't know, given that Rick has recently torn down the sign that Father Gabriel put up, and just the general sort of mistrust of him. I mean, Father Gabriel does not have a good track record, and he does weird, crazy stuff all the time. I was finding it implausible that Rick would actually give Judith to Father Gabriel for safekeeping.
Yeah, it does seem like an about face. It's also, the same way that the wolf has suddenly, conveniently in this episode, decided to be more of a human being, that Gabriel has like found his spine also during this extremely stressful moment. It's convenient, but it's and I guess it's welcome in the case of both of those changes. You're like, yeah, I kind of want the wolf to be a nice guy, and I kind of want Father Gabriel to be a dude who doesn't piss himself all the time. So I think that makes it an easier shit sandwich for the audience to swallow, even though both of these conversions seem a little bit unlikely.
They seem unlikely and very swift. And
yeah.
I guess while watching, part of me wished they had done a little bit more to show why the conversions took place, because they kind of happen out of the blue. I don't really believe that Denise has converted the wolf with 5 sentences of whatever convincing thing she tried to say. I do believe the wolf is trying to keep her near him because he's afraid for his life. Like, that is something I understand. And maybe they could have some moment, but they don't really show a moment convincingly enough for me to believe that he would try to save her. Mm-hmm. And then in Father Gabriel's case, again, I wish they could show a little bit more of why he converted. It doesn't, you kind of are just left to say, oh, he just finally gets it. And he says things where you understand the moment when he gets certain things and is like, oh, now I'm not scared anymore. And so he says it out loud, but to me, I don't see any action that has taken place that if I were Rick, would give me enough faith to put my child into safekeeping with him at the point that he did. Yeah. Other than desperation, maybe, but even then, I think Gabriel's maybe one of the last people I would hand her over to, only because up until this point, he has shown again and again that he cannot be trusted in the face of stress, and certainly in the face of a walker crisis. And you're entrusting your precious child to him. Just don't buy it at all. I feel like he would have forced Carl to go with him, or somebody to go with him, in order to make sure that she was safe. Like, I don't think he would have sent him off by himself with her. And also, similarly, I don't really buy that they would have brought Sam with them, because they know Sam's off his rocker.
Well, Sam, that's the problem with a lot of this, is they decide to have this conversation outside.
Right.
Like, they just kind of go over the edge of the zombie horde, and they're like, okay, guys, this is the new plan. We're going to go to the quarry and get the cars and come back. And but Gabriel's going to stay here and with the baby. And Sam, you should stay here too. But he's like, no, I'm not going to stay. And so the conversation starts to get louder. And they're like, oh, well, Sam, the greatest liability in Alexandria, is making our bad decision worse by disagreeing,
But at that point, you're his mom, and she says all sorts of weird stuff to him, like pretend you're brave and all this other stuff. But at this point, you see that he's a liability. The smart thing to do would have been for her to go with Father Gabriel and Sam. She's not exactly the best fighter either. So no. I just don't know why they would have made that decision. Rick fully understands what a liability Sam is. Mm-hmm. And I just don't buy that he would risk their entire group. I mean, we see him making decisions like this all the time. And I just don't still, even watching this a second time, I'm like, no, this just would not have happened. They would have had Gabriel, they would have taken those kids and gone off and kept them aside, because he's clearly having a bit of a nervous breakdown already. He's been having one. The kid,
Yeah.
Sam, that is. So anyway, that's one part that I am. This whole episode, like watching it a second time. The first time is bad enough, but watching it a second time, I'm like yelling at the screen.
Yeah, this is bad. Honestly, I think Rick should have taken the whole conga line to a building, like wherever Gabriel went to hole up, and just take everybody there, find other willing volunteers, and then head back out again. Something along those lines. We also have Rosita, Tara, Eugene are holed up somewhere else. Oh, well, where the wolf had been locked up. Carol wakes up. Morgan wakes up. That's awkward. Carol has a gun on her belt, but asks for another gun.
Yeah.
I don't know why that happened. We got Glenn and Enid outside the walls in the church that's going to be part of the new expansion, and they have a existential conversation about why keep living, who do you live for, and Glenn's list of people that he lives for are his parents and Dale and Herschel and Andrea and Tyrese. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, all those people I agree with except for Andrea, who was never useful.
Yeah.
That pissed me off a little bit. And then I forget who Enid's people were. I think just her folks, because she doesn't know anybody else in the cast to call out for.
Right.
But yeah, then they find a gun and a Bible, and that's great moment. But it's kind of like the never-ending Glenn and Enid talk about why we should keep going talk.
Well, we've got a lot of conversion therapy going on here. So we've got her thing going on. We've got the Carol and Morgan thing going on. And we've got the Wolf and Denise thing going on. And to me, they're deliberately putting all of these things in the same place. I think for similar reasons. And just having you look at this particular situation, these types of personalities from different ways. Oh, sorry, 4, I guess, because then you got to count Father Gabriel, I think, in this group too, right? Sort of whether you will be just for yourself or whether you will be living your life by some sort of list of rules, and what are those rules? And, in the Carol and Morgan place, Morgan strongly feels that by doing what he is doing, he has found a little patch of sanity in the crazy world and humanity and morality. And Carol is basically like, no, you've endangered everybody. And one of the things she is very upset about is that the wolf has taken Denise. And Morgan seems mollified by this fact, but he still is making his argument that they should be paying attention to these kinds of things.
Yeah, I totally side with Morgan in this, the way this breaks down. And, it's like, I don't know, probably 95% Carol's fault that the wolf is out there doing what he's doing right now. And then her actions later only underscore the fact that she is a fire first and, figure out what's going on second
later
person right now. So
do you agree with Morgan's decision to keep the wolf alive?
Yeah, essentially, because his argument that with life there's possibility, I think there's no counter argument to that. As long as, like him letting go 6, like Mr. Clean Lips and his friends, that was a mistake, because they still posed an active threat. But the wolf who is wounded and is tied up, like by all means, try to convert that guy. And so Carol is the one who undoes the stability of that situation by forcing a fight in the last episode that didn't need to happen. And that
I guess maybe, but you know what? I still think that having somebody like that and who's thinking like that and who did pose a threat along with his colleagues, whatever you want to call him, his pack, is not. It's a danger to have in that community. And yes, I do think Carol is responsible for the fact that he got out. But ultimately, I don't know that Morgan is correct in how he has tried to go about things.
Well, he shouldn't have used secrecy. Well, sure.
Well, no,
that only lessened the amount of security around the guy. But like I said, I don't think you can argue with his statement.
All right.
As long as the
I'm
guy's
not
alive,
arguing with
there's a
it.
chance.
All right.
So now it's dark outside. It was light. It was maybe dusk, but the sun was still up. And now the next time we see the conga line, it's pitch black. And Nicotero starts doing some zombie lunges at the screen.
Yep.
The atmosphere gets way more eerie. I definitely had the willies watching this scene. Um, Also, this episode, we should mention just technically, as a Nicotero episode, has some of the
Best
strongest
zombies.
like when I say hero zombies, I just mean the really detailed ones.
Yeah.
Hero zombie appearances and walk by shuffle bys, you might want to call them.
They look amazing.
Yeah, there's like zero, if any, repeated zombies. So we're talking about a dozen, 2 dozen, very intricately made up zombies that come really close to our characters and to the camera.
But this is where it all goes kind of wrong. For no apparent reason. And this was one of the most infuriating scenes I've ever watched. And I think probably part of what added to your perception that this could be a dream sequence. I also thought it was quite surreal, though wasn't sure what they were doing with it. But basically, out of nowhere, Sam just starts freaking out.
He starts hearing Carol's voice in his head, which is never a good sign.
No.
Another sign that Carol has terrible judgment and has fucked this whole thing up, frankly.
Well, the stuff that she told him is pretty evil. Not cool. I mean, she didn't learn her lesson with Lizzie. Come on.
Yeah.
Just seriously weird.
This was her reacting. This was her definitely still bouncing off of the Lizzie experience, with whom she was only sweet.
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. It just was a little weird. But anyway, like he keeps hearing, he's definitely off the deep end. He's hearing all the crazy things she's told him about the walkers, and he just starts flipping out. But even when he starts flipping out, there's a couple of weird things about how this all comes to pass. Because when he starts sort of like yelling, but there's no real reaction for a while.
Yeah. He stops walking at first, and then people start talking to him. He stops walking because he sees a child zombie, one of the only kid zombies we've seen since the first season. Basically, other than second season, I guess we saw Sophia's zombie as a zombie coming out of the barn. But there's a kid zombie in like a tracksuit with his back to the camera, not even like really up in our face. It's kind of interesting that the show almost seemed like shy about it.
Yeah, it is funny.
But Sam flips out. He's like, okay, well, obviously that's me. I'm gonna be that zombie. Stops walking, and everybody's like, Sam, let's go, let's keep going. And he's just like, I can't do it. I want to, but I can't. And things seem to be escalating. Nobody's doing anything. People are holding hands still. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't know the holding hands was ever that useful in this scenario.
Nope.
Because you probably want to have both hands free when things go bad.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, it's like actually extremely sudden. It's like a good jump. Not a scare, really, because I think it was inevitable. But suddenly, 2 zombies are biting his head.
Yeah, but like really, really fast and kind of out of nowhere. And he's been making a lot of noise up until the point when this happens. So that was kind of like, that is part of what contributed to the dream sequence piece of this. And also everybody's reaction to this is zero. Zero. It's strange. And I mean, I don't think it's just shock. I think it's just, I don't even know what to call it.
Jessie starts screaming, and then we start, voices start to echo. Yeah. They mess with the sound again. So voices start to echo, and we've got more of this Atmo music and violins and stuff. And then just quick shots of people's faces looking like, ooh, I don't know what to do, which is very unlike Rick and Michonne. Yeah,
it is. And then you've also got the weird death grip on Carl, which I thought was kind of strange too. Where like Jessie is just not letting go of his hand, which I just think if you're getting eaten, your grip is not going to be on Carl at that point. I think you probably would have released him pretty quickly. I just don't buy that would have happened. And so Rick then is forced to cut her arm off while flashbacking into some of their more tender moments. Which is really strange. And then of course, to make this just a full, tragedy, the last member of this little clan, Ron, freaks out too and like aims at Rick with his gun, and Michonne just is not having any of this, and she impales the kid on her katana and just cuts him down. But of course, and this is a very famous piece of the comic series of the graphic novel, young Carl is not unscathed. He has had his eye shot out. So that is pretty much that's a pretty seminal scene in the graphic novel. The fact that
do you recall who shoots his eye out in the book?
God, you know what? I don't remember.
No.
Wasn't it Shane?
No.
No?
Shane had been dead for a long time.
No, it was somebody, but I didn't think that it was Ron. It was some, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that there was no Ron, because it was Andrea and Rick had hooked up I feel like by this point in the book.
Yeah.
So I don't recall who it might have been. It might have been like the other mayor of Alexandria.
Douglas Monroe is the person that shot his eye out.
Douglas Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's been so long since I've read the books. Should probably get back into that. So this is kind of it. They start to run towards a building, and then we have a bunch more scenes of people who are in lockdown throughout Alexandria, like Eugene and Carol, and Carol and Morgan have a little conversation. The Wolf and Denise make a break for freedom, even though he's like, we're gonna wait for a break and then go for the guard tower. I'm like, the break that they choose to take
so
is like
bad.
5-foot corridor between zombies.
Right, and
Denise,
then even Denise just kind of hanging out in a strange
pauses.
way. And also the Wolf is pretty good at doing this stuff. He's been out there for a really long time, and I feel like when he gets, when what happens to him, he gets like bitten, and she's like, "We'll save you," and it's really like, dude, you gotta cut his arm off if you're gonna save him.
I think that's what she means she'll do, but she doesn't have an axe. They don't have any weapons.
Right, but they're really bad at doing this, and, I guess this is the part where their conversion happens or something, but basically the Wolf sacrifices himself to get Denise out safely, and Carol just, like, takes the Wolf out without really paying attention, though sort of notices, even while he's dying, he basically tries to distract the walkers that are around Denise so that she can get to the infirmary.
He's had 100% conversion by this point. Not only has he saved Denise at the sacrifice of getting bitten, he then is saved. Like, he's actively saving her from a zombie when Carol shoots him. Like, so for me, I'm like, Carol, what are you doing?
Yeah, she's not paying attention at this point. But again, I feel like his conversion is weird, but okay.
Yeah, but it's so clearly what it was. A conversion that for Carol to just shoot him doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it just underlines like her judgment being horrible. Certainly in this episode and the one before it. Usually I'm like, Carol is one of the more practical people, has a good head on her shoulders. But these two in this story arc, I'm not don't enjoy it at all.
But the upshot of this is that Denise makes it to the infirmary and is there when Rick is carrying Carl in, and suddenly knows everything there is to know about this kind of injury. And again, with these like crazy conversions that come out of nowhere and don't necessarily make any sense, she's basically taking care of him, and apparently Michonne's the only one who can hold him while she does like a stitch, even though she needs to go out and help Crazy Pants Rick, who has gone totally like off the deep end.
This is a good thing. We need Rick to go off the deep end. We need somebody to do something badass at this point. After all the events of this episode, we need someone to just be like, I'll be on the porch killing zombies. You guys do what you want to do. And so this is like a good scene. I'd say, okay, it's on par with the opening scene for this episode, is Rick just going outside and swinging away and doing some good work.
Yep. But then this is where the whole weird music soundtrack kicks in, and all of them are going out there to help Rick. And then Gabriel has his conversion. He's like, hey, we got to go fight. And you got everybody out there just swinging away. And there's a lot of blood. This is very, to me, the visuals of this though are very much the graphic novel, where you sometimes just see panels of blood or like a character
Yeah.
kind of covered in grime, and it's very dark. And
Yeah.
this is kind of where they go with this.
There's
And
yeah, towards the end of this sequence, there's just shot after shot of person swinging a weapon at the camera against a black background, like covered in gore. So yeah, that's
right.
exactly what that is.
And we got also Glenn and Maggie and Enid doing their
This
thing.
is so bad and so annoying.
Terrible. I know.
Glenn and Enid need to save Maggie. Sure, Maggie's on an unstable platform. So Glenn does the distraction move. He's like, Enid, go and save her with your two scarves.
I know,
Enid
but
climbs up the wall and is on top of like a stable metal thing that is right next to the unstable wooden thing. And instead of Maggie just getting off the unstable wooden thing and getting on the metal part, they both get on the wood so they can watch Glenn get mobbed. He's doing some amazing like pistol kung fu stuff.
yeah.
Remember that movie that
Yes.
came out? What was that? The Sean Bean was in it. Either way, like just like pew, shooting zombies in the face with a pistol over and over again because he has a really big magazine. But then he gets mobbed. He is certainly dead
Yeah.
for like the 30th time in this show.
Oh,
And
without
then
question.
Sasha and Abraham come in to quote unquote save the day, shooting on with full automatic fire all around Glenn. Certainly would
He
have
would've-
shot him.
Yeah, no, definitely. Absolutely.
But no, he's fine because this show hates its audience and any kind of suspension of disbelief.
So anyway, they make their grand re-entrance, their grand return, triumphant return. And then, okay, so we got everybody in the zombie melee.
Everybody's here now.
And then Daryl has a great idea. You know what we're going to use this fuel truck for? We're going to like put all this fuel into the water source. And we're just going to have all the walkers attracted toward it. And all I could think about is like, okay, so this seems like a good idea, but then you got a bunch of walkers on fire walking around.
And is this their water source?
I don't know, but just putting this in any kind of a water source is just not a good idea, I think.
Man. So I guess, yeah, the idea is that zombies are going to be more interested in a fire than they are in people. I don't think that's true.
I
That
agree.
zombies are going to walk into a fire. I think we've seen that, and then somehow be killed, which we have seen zombies that have been burned, really badly burned before on this show. Sometimes they are no longer effective, like their bodies break down. But this is just a gasoline fire on top of water, which means that as they walk into the pond, they're going to extinguish the flames that are on them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll be fine. And then they'll just walk out of the pond and go back to killing Alexandrians, I have to assume.
Well, and we've also seen even in the woods where Daryl and was before, and we even saw examples of super burnt up zombies, like burnt pretty much everything gone, and they're still like able to kill people. So you'd have to really just melt them basically in order for them to become ineffective, completely like harmless. And I just don't think that's the case here with what you have going on. And in fact, I feel like they would probably end up burning Alexandria down to the ground because I feel like they'd wander out of whatever this is and just wander into houses and stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't really buy this. I thought this was insane. But anyway,
It
that's how they
makes
play
for a
it.
good, like, it makes for a big set piece.
Right.
But yeah, it's not great. Glenn is even like, hey, let's just drive around and lure them out. And Daryl's like, no, we've got to get them all together and do it this way. I was like, oh, okay, fine. And you're going to waste a rocket. You couldn't just throw a lighter in there.
Right. You need a rocket? You don't need a rocket.
You don't need a waste of rocket. So that's hooray, everybody. You won.
Yes.
You did it.
Yes. So we got that, and
Actually, the daylight scene of people like just looking around at all the bodies, and
That was all right.
it's kind of cool. But then we go in and Rick has his moment with Carl,
yep.
where he's crying. He's like, "I just want to show you the new world," It's there's so much possibility. I believe in Alexandrians now, even though three of them just died right in front of us, and actually we killed one of them, and
Yeah.
we didn't do anything to help the other two.
Yep.
But I believe in these people now because of the montage we just had.
Yep.
And then
Um, yeah.
cut. I mean, end of scene, end of episode, and end of the torture. There were a couple of good sequences in that episode, but for the most part, it's garbage.
Yep. And then it just leaps into the next episode, which,
Pretty far in the future.
yeah, a couple months, few months later. It's called The Next World. It was directed by Carrie Scogland and written by Angela Kane and Corey Reed. And this also, especially in the beginning scene, had a little bit of a dreamlike sequenced feeling to me. And maybe again, this is deliberate, but it's a little bit of a happy domestic scene with a soundtrack on as well. With Rick and Michonne being all cute about toothpaste, and Carl being all cute about the fact that he doesn't have an eye and he's playing ball. And they're an I mean, if you didn't get the sort of implications of this scene, I actually just assumed that they had already shacked up at this point when I first saw it.
It seems like it.
But they leave that till later. But it's just the sort of a scene of blissful domesticity. And then you've got Rick and Daryl going off to forage, per the instructions of Eugene, and Denise has a request for Orange Crush. But it feels like whatever damage had been done by the melee they are in full recovery mode. This is almost one of those scenes where it's like everything's great.
Everything is great. They've done the expansion. The expansion has happened. It's not totally clear, but it seems like the parts of the wall are down inside. Like, so yeah, they've built the expansion around the new church and the other areas. So everything is great. And I would not usually consider this as a problem, but everything is great, and The Walking Dead is actually pretty dull.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is mostly an episode. It's a road trip episode for Daryl and Rick, and it's also a Spencer, Michonne, Carl, and Enid episode. I think
It's
that's
it's also an introduction of a character.
yeah, but hot damn, I hate this character too now. Like,
Yeah, he's really annoying.
he's great. He's great in the rest of the show, but his introduction is made to make you
Hate him.
well think he might be interesting, but yeah, wow, this episode actually is so annoying.
I also I don't buy that they would have brought him back at all. Not after the stuff that he's done. But I will talk about that as we get into it. But who we are talking about is Jesus.
Yeah. Paul Rovia, which I don't
Yeah.
think anybody ever calls him that ever again. It's just Jesus.
No, it's just Jesus. So basically, Rick and Daryl run out to forage for some toothpaste and other stuff. And they hear about this place that may have some stuff, and they actually come upon this truck on this farm that's just full of all these supplies. It actually almost seems like a plant.
Mm-hmm.
It seems too good to be true. And they keep saying stuff like the law of statistics or whatever they are saying.
Law of averages.
And all that. And, and they, of course, this is just not as easy as it seems. And the way they come across Jesus, I feel, is really weird too. He really comes out of nowhere, out of all the places they find this dude, and he manages to I just feel like they would have caught him picking Rick's pocket faster.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like they would have fallen for this. And he manages to set off firecrackers to go off a few minutes later. Like, that would have meant that he heard them coming up the road and set these off to go off just at the time. I don't know. It just seemed totally ridiculous to me.
They've been there for seconds,
Yeah.
like maybe a minute, and he's come up with this kind of elaborate plan. It's an okay plan, but the execution
Doesn't make
is
sense.
unlikely. And how did he even know that Rick had the keys? How did we see Rick put keys in his pocket? I don't think
No,
we did.
and I just don't think that any of this makes sense. And kind of agree with Daryl here. Like, why would you even trust this guy? And so basically, he steals their truck of goodies, and they go off on a road trip, trailing him sort of like in the Daryl way. And
Yeah,
he's
they
also,
chased down a truck on foot.
yeah, and that always makes sense.
Hmm.
And then the truck is dragging a vending machine. So
Not yeah, but eventually it drops it or something, or the chain breaks, and
yeah,
then they still manage to find it because then he has a tire problem. There's a lot
okay.
of
There,
unlikely things connected
there,
together.
there are, but I will also say that the noise that that truck is making, dragging that vending machine down the way,
Yeah.
I feel would have attracted every walker within spitting distance.
Oh
So I
yeah.
feel like Rick and Daryl on foot, not such a great idea to be following this pretty loud, like beacon, I guess is what I would call it. So I don't really buy that either. But
But okay,
okay.
so let's say for being nice's sake, they recover their truck, this invaluable treasure trove of food and supplies. They've been talking about how they're kind of low at Alexandria, but then they're always every time they get into the truck, instead of just being like, let's get this back home right away, Rick's like,
Right.
let's take the long way home and see what else we can find. Or hey, let's stop here at this farm. Oh,
Yeah.
and there's a guy on the roof. Let's do like some kind of weird Keystone Cops chase scene, even though he's off the. Once they get him off the truck, why not just turn around
And
and
go.
drive back to Alexandria?
Well, and also since this is so close to where you kind of tried to leave him, he's managed to get onto the top of the roof. I just feel like I was fully expecting more of an ambush here other than just him. You know what I mean? I thought there was going to be more people. I thought he had deliberately led them to this area. And I feel like they would be too smart to fall for that. And I think that they would have just gone away instead of this crazy thing that happens, which ultimately leads to the truck being sunk in the bottom of the lake with all the supplies. And then they're like, oh, this guy is too good because he didn't pull a weapon on Daryl. And they bring him back with them. And I just don't think that they do that because he's crazy. I just don't think they
He's
do it.
done he's done nothing other than he's said a couple of things that make it seem like he's not a total jerk. He's not a wolf.
No, but he's not. He's not great. He's not
He's cost
somebody.
them. He's cost them like an incalculable amount in the, and he tried to steal from them. So not
And
someone that you want to recruit.
and he's also somebody that has some very like his plans and the way he has gone about doing things. I don't think that he is a safe person to have in your camp. So I just don't think that they would have brought him. Maybe if they were going to test him, fine, but I don't think they would have brought him back to Alexandria. I think he's too risky. But I don't
But
know.
then he's back, and then he's walking in on Rick and Michonne
I know. So Rick
for
and
the end of the
Michonne.
episode.
Okay, can I just say the Rick and Michonne initial sexy scene was so awkward. I was like, oh, like because they like turned up the sound effects on their kissing, which sound like super juicy, and it just totally. I was like, oh guys, now is where you need a music montage, and you're just not using it. And
I didn't notice that they were.
it was like it may be because I was listening to it with headphones, but it was
Mhm.
one of those like super awkward scenes that I'm just like, okay, just cut, we don't need to see any more of this.
You don't want to see the saliva strings.
No.
Um,
Anyway, and then
so the,
he walks in on them, and I just feel like Rick just would have shot him at this point. Rick's like, man, don't mess up my loving time.
and
It's been a
what's with
long
his
time.
hurry? Why is he being like we have to talk and it has to be right now or whatever? Yeah, I'm just sick of this guy. Get
Yeah.
out of here, Jesus. You're great in every other season,
Yeah.
or maybe for the rest of this season he'll be great. But this introduction is not good.
No, it's not. In other parts of this episode, we also have the Spencer piece of this episode, and basically it's Michonne tracking him down. He won't tell her what he's doing. He seems very upset. I gotta do something. I gotta do something. Can't he just tell her what he's doing? I don't understand what all the suspense is about.
Yeah, it's purely for television.
And I think it's pretty easy for fans to surmise who Carl has found in the woods as a walker because you just see her leg and you're like, oh God, really? And so basically, Spencer's tracking down Deanna as a walker to dispatch her because that's what family does. And there's this weird, I'm sure that it's to try to bond Spencer and Michonne together, to show that Michonne is able to form attachments in a way that she wasn't, and a lot of this is, I guess, she's giving credit to Deanna for. But it still feels a little false. I also feel like the strange Carl decision about leading Deanna so that she can be killed by a family member is kind of weird.
Yeah.
He's never
Just
had
'cause
any
he had to
problem.
he just had to kill his mom, but
Right.
I don't think he thinks of that as being like a great thing for him. I don't know.
No, and I just think that was an odd. Although I think it's to show how he feels about Michonne. Ultimately, that was the payoff, because when Michonne questions him about it and is like, "Why are you just leading walkers around the woods? You should have killed it." And then he's like, "I couldn't do that for just anybody. I do that for family. I do that for you." And so you know that whatever's going on with her and Rick is going to be okay.
Yeah.
But it's it's a strange thing, and I agree with you. This episode dragged. I was just like, "Oh my gosh."
No, it's not a good episode. There's no good payoff.
No.
I guess we're supposed to think that Rick and Michonne hooking up is the payoff. Like, no, I think that truck would have been better. Why does zombie Deanna have like no zombie bites?
I know, you would have thought she would have had a lot more than that going on.
Her last scene was her shooting into a crowd of zombies. Yep. Granted, yeah, she's already been bit. She's gonna turn, and maybe the idea is that she turned as soon as she stopped shooting the gun and nobody ate her. But like if we're seeing a zombie Deanna, why aren't we seeing zombie Jessie, zombie Sam, zombie Ron?
Well, I mean, at least with what they showed, they got so torn apart that maybe they weren't really fully realized, and that's my guess. And maybe they just got slashed in the melee.
But it's same exact scenario for Deanna's death. Like,
yeah, true.
Huge crowd of zombies. And granted, everybody turns at different rates, and some people have been too eaten to turn. That's something we've seen. But I don't know. Like, the show obviously feels like Deanna needs like an extra send off.
Yeah.
I think
they just wanted to show how much further they could go with her makeup. That they've shown all sorts of levels of her makeup, and this was like the piece to resistance.
Yeah.
But I guess it was just sort of, I just found the logic behind Spencer's thing boring. I still hate him as a character. I don't really care whether he goes back to Alexandria. I kind of hope he doesn't. But anyway, that was kind of a boring piece of it.
This episode is not a winner. So yeah, this is the second episode of the second half of the season, and I'm already like, well, okay, I guess we'll keep going. And you know what? They lose almost a million. They lose almost a million viewers between this episode and the next one, episode 11.
Well, I can see why. I mean, I think it makes sense that happened. It's just not exciting, and there's so many ways that they could have gone with this, and I don't know, I felt like maybe some people had to be on vacation, so they had to slim down with the cast. I mean, we didn't even see Glenn really in this. We see Maggie for like 5 seconds. We don't see Carol, do we? I don't think so. We see Denise for 5 seconds. We just don't see a lot of people. So, it's just not their strongest work. But all right, we'll go on into the next realm and see what happens there. Hopefully it'll be more exciting.
Yeah, so next two episodes are 11 and 12, Knots Untie and Not Tomorrow Yet. And I think we have some more savior adjacent action. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to continue that body count. It might not always be that simple. I don't like feeling this negative about The Walking Dead, but this season just kind of churns in my stomach. Especially episode 9 was just so disappointing.
You and I have talked about this before, even leading up to this. This is definitely one of my least favorite seasons, and this is one of those reasons. The last episode as well, just the whole crazy weird death scene. But let's sort of call it a day. But I'd like to hear from people if they have comments about these 2 episodes. You can shoot us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. or tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, on the Twitters. And you could also leave us a comment, reanimatedpodcast.com. Let us know if you hated or loved this, and if you disagree with us, that's totally fine. I would love to hear logic behind that. I always like to hear counter arguments, and then we'll leave off till the next time.
Yeah, and if you listen to this podcast and you want to help us out a little bit, leave us a review on iTunes. Let us know. Let other people know if you like the show and if you think people should listen to it. That would be helpful.
Great. So until next time, ciao.
Bye. Thanks for listening.